no place to bolt to. "How did you find me?" He shrugged. "Longish story. You're not under arrest." "I'm not." "No," said Quillan. "When we get to Manon, the Commissioner will have a suggestion to make to you." "Suggestion?" Trigger said warily. "I believe you're to take back your old Precol job on Manon, but as cover for your participation in our little project. If you agree to it." "What if I don't?" He shrugged again. "It seems you'll be writing your own ticket from here on out." Trigger stared at him, wondering. Why? Quillan grinned. "New instructions have been handed down," he said. "If you're still curious, ask Whatsit." "Oh," Trigger said. "Then why are you here?" "I," said Quillan, "am to make damn sure you get to Manon. I brought a few people with me." "Mihul too?" Trigger asked, a shade diffidently. "No. She's on Maccadon." "Is she how's she doing?" "Doing all right," Quillan said. "She sends her regards and says a little less heft on the next solar plexus you torpedo should be good enough." Trigger flushed. "She isn't sore, is she?" "Not the way you mean," he considered. "Not many people have jumped Mihul successfully. In her cockeyed way, she seemed pretty proud of her student." Trigger felt the flush deepen. "I got her off guard," she said. "Obviously," said Quillan. "In any ordinary argument, she could pull your legs off and tie you up with them. Still, that wasn't bad. Have you talked to anybody since you came on board?" "Just the room stewardess. And a couple of old ladies in the next cabin." "Yeah," he said. "Couple of old ladies. What did you talk about?" Trigger recounted the conversation. He reflected, nodded and stood up. "I put a couple of suitcases in that closet over there," he said. "Your personal stuff is in them, detracered. Another thing. Somebody checked over your finances and came to the conclusion you're broke." "Not exactly broke," said Trigger. Quillan reached into a pocket, pulled out an envelope and laid it on the cabinet. "Here's a little extra spending money then," he said. "The balance of your Precol pay to date. I had it picked up on Evalee this morning. 728 FC." "Thanks," Trigger said. "I can use some of that." They stood looking at each other. "Any questions?" he asked. "Sure," Trigger said. "But you wouldn't answer them." "Try me, doll," said Quillan. "But let's shift operations to the fanciest cocktail lounge on this thing before you start. I feel like relaxing a little. For just one girl, you've given us a fairly rough time these last 48 hours." "I'm sorry," Trigger said. "I'll bet," said Quillan. Trigger glanced at the closet. If he'd brought everything along, there was a dress in one of those suitcases that would have been a little too daring for Maccadon. It should, therefore, be just about right for a cocktail lounge on the Dawn City, and she hadn't had a chance to wear it yet. "Give me 10 minutes to change." "Fine." Quillan started toward the door. "By the way, I'm your neighbor now." "The cabin at the end of the hall?" she asked, startled. "That's right." He smiled at her. "I'll be back in 10 minutes." Well, that was going to be cozy. Trigger found the dress, shook it out and slipped into it, enormously puzzled, but also enormously relieved. That Whatsit. Freshening up her makeup, she wondered how he had induced the Elfkund ladies to leave. Perhaps he'd managed to have a better cabin offered to them. It must be convenient to have that kind of a pull. End of chapter 11.